I'm really passionate about parlour community because it's actually a result of a very long lifetime with a whole string of experiences. But it's an attempt actually to use modern technology to try and make a change in our quality of life, and then bridging over the political aspect and getting to a higher level of perception actually of a real quality of life. We're here this morning at Boscawen, which is one of the most magical stone circles in the West Penwith. This has led me all over the world to look into the knowledge of the ancient people, the kind of people who put this thing up. Their life was so much more honest and so much more simple than ours. In the same way as the old Waitaha in New Zealand, they were deeply concerned with each other, they cared for each other, and they were in harmony with nature. They recognised that there was something way beyond their 5 centuries. I'd really like you to join in sharing some of the experiences I've had in my lifetime. Bear with me, because some sceptics might think are a bit outrageous, but they actually happened to me. And I'd love you to come with me to understand why I feel the way I feel. I'm Hamish, I'm a blacksmith, I'm a metal sculptor. I do a bit of writing, I work with trees, and I work with the land, and I work with healing the land, and that sounds a bit funny, but I do heal land and people as well. I live here in Cornwall with my wife Bar, and we have 12 acres of the most wonderful woodland, which takes quite a lot of looking after. And thank goodness Bar does most of the work. I really wanted to set up Parlour Community because of a whole series of events that happened, leading towards an enormous dissatisfaction with the way the world was going on at the moment. The people who were making the major decisions, and the whole business about this incessant business of going to war for any region at all. And I set it up because I think I was inspired by Buckminster Fuller, who said you can't actually tilt at well-established systems, and the only way to get around them was to provide an alternative which was better. And the only way I could think of doing that was to set up a new community who were aware of the people around them and cared for them and looked after them, and were independent from the whole national systems of providing food and electricity and things like that. And it seems to be a huge step, but it's the only logical one that I can see that was going to work. And I set up Parlour Community because if enough people get together, they have a loud enough voice to make themselves heard. You know, when I talked about the whole project, there were so many people who agreed entirely, and they said, yeah, we agree with you that these are terrific problems, but what can I do? And I wanted to answer that one, and the only answer to me is something like Parlour Community. But it's not I, it's us. What can we do? Can we take our power back? Can we make our own decisions? Can we become independent? Can we be without fear? And will my grandchildren come to me and say, okay, you did try and do something at least, because you knew there was something wrong. Like everybody else, I was in the rat race for a long time, and I had a factory and 100 people, and my world was the survival in the factory and the making stuff and selling it and doing all the things that one does, and total involvement. I just accepted that the work ethic was the big thing, and I can understand how people get absolutely trapped into that because you believe it's the most important thing in the world, and in fact it's not. There are values that are much more important than just surviving the economic battle. I suppose I'm one of the lucky ones because I was seriously involved in the whole commercial game of earning a living and looking after kids and coping with a mortgage and all that sort of thing. But I was lucky in that I have had some really extraordinary experiences in my lifetime that are way beyond the normal of people's living. And I have to admit that when I was running the factory, I had no idea. And if I'd heard myself speaking then, I would have said, you've flipped, you've fallen off your trolley or whatever. But now I'm desperately trying to imply that there is a set of values which is infinitely more valuable than the commercial ones. That there are spiritual values, and as soon as you say spiritual, people think it's a religious thing. It's not. It's nothing to do with that. It's moving into an understanding of why we're here, and our relationship with the earth and the cosmos, and with particularly with our neighbours, our friends and neighbours, and we've lost this whole business of being in community. There was a time when the old grandmothers and would look after the kids, and it would be like a much wider family that in their way of living. But nowadays we have nothing to pull us together cohesively. Community to me is quite simply caring. It's about caring for people who are less capable of coping with life than you are. And a lot of that we've completely lost in this tremendous battle we have just to survive. Well, the business developed. It's one of these inevitable things that anybody in business knows about. I mean, we started off with 10 people, and then it began to get difficult for me to find enough work for 10 people, so I decided we need a rep. And once you need a rep, you go from 10 people to 25 people because you've got to pay for the rep and all that system that keeps going up. And then we developed, and eventually we were employing 100 people. It started off as an engineering project, and I loved working with steel and iron and things like that. And it was in a little cowshed. And the development from the cowshed to a factory employing 100 people was immensely satisfying. But at that time, it left me with absolutely no margin for anything else in my life at all. It became a sort of nightmare. On this train, you couldn't get off. And this is the situation. I see people in it all the time. And I really would like to introduce them to the fact that it is not 100% virtuous to just work. 100 people is a big mouth to feed in furniture manufacturing. You have to have regular contracts, and we did that. We were getting accolades and write-ups for export all over the country. We had our furniture in every embassy in the world practically, and it was going very successfully. I realised eventually after a while that I wasn't doing the design work that I enjoyed. It was frantic stuff to try and cope with or get work in, and there was no joy about it at all. And I eventually felt I was just a sort of wet nurse for 100 people and dealt with all their problems. I felt that there was a dimension missing, and at that time I didn't know what I know now. We've worked with the Japanese and Mitsubishi and people like that, and one of the cathartic things that happened is a very small thing, like pushing a switch. I'd had a long hard day, and I was about 2 miles from the house, and I looked over and there was a beautiful red gold sunset, and on the crest of the edge of the field, these black oak trees with their branches all there, and I thought, God, that's so beautiful. I wish I had time to look at it. And something clicked inside. What are you talking about? You have got time. Stop the car, which I did, and I sat there, not in the car. I went over to the fence and leaned on this fence, and I watched the sun go down. And it was a cathartic moment because it was probably the turning point of realizing that what I was doing wasn't what I wanted to do. And then I think it was a month later, I was coming down the track to do the same sort of thing again, to go up to London to talk about some furniture and all that sort of thing. Beautiful morning, and I had a very old 14th century house, drive down 5 acres of land in Sussex. And I had a gardener who used to come part-time. And as I was coming down, this gardener came in his battered old van, and he pulled onto the grass, and as I passed, tearing up to London, he looked out and he just grinned at me and shook his head. And I thought, God, you've got it right. You are going to spend this beautiful day in this beautiful place in Sussex, and I, in order to employ you, are going up to London. And that was another cathartic moment. I said, I've got it completely wrong. That started the whole business of the realization that the race was not worth a candle, that the money behind it was not worth a candle. it was the communication with people and nature that was really worthwhile. And that was a significant turn in my whole life. We were working on the top end of the market, and on the top end of the furniture market is the competition is totally global, and the stress of doing that is quite enormous. And then there was a little bit of a turn down with the recession of the late 70s, which was very difficult to write. And one of my directors died, and I said I'll just take over what he's doing, because we really can't afford to get somebody else in this thing. And the other one, the financial one, went out to New Zealand. And right in the middle of all of that, I was taken suddenly ill on one Thursday evening. Found myself whisked to hospital on the Friday. I was operated on the Saturday, and in the middle of the operation, I died. I had an out-of-the-body experience which profoundly changed my thinking on absolutely everything, because it is a unique experience. You don't have to go through it to get through into a stage of understanding what we're talking about, but it helps. And to me, I was so rigidly into the disciplines of manufacture that I hadn't really had time to think about other things. And it profoundly changed my thinking. I had to wipe out the company. Actually, just was taken out by the bank, and I retreated to Cornwall. This hill at the back here has always drawn me. It's drawn me for years, and I had to find a way of living. Now, I had been working on every Wednesday evening, being taught blacksmithing by my works director. So when I came down here, I said, "What am I going to be?" Because when I was 6 years old, my mother asked me what I wanted to be, and I said, "I want to be a blacksmith." And she said, no, you must get a proper job. And I said, "Well, what is a proper job?" And she said, "A doctor or a dentist or a lawyer or a civil servant." And I said, "What does a civil servant do?" She said, "I don't know, but it's a proper job." Anyway, after 53 years, I thought, when I came down here, I will earn a living as a blacksmith. And I have never regretted a moment of giving up the manufacturing bit and giving up the big money side. Actually, it's a very huge advantage for me now to have been in a position at one time of making a lot of money, because I recognise the real value of that, which is very little indeed. I came back here after I had my near-death experience, and I found this hugely restful, magical place. The view all the way around, I think it's one of the finest views in Europe, and it's incredibly peaceful. I was going along very happily with the whole factory thing and it working and all that sort of thing, and then I became ill. I had a long chat with a surgeon and his two assistants, who had a look at me and said, "There is something seriously wrong with your inside. We can't find out what it is. We'll have to go in and operate." And then I had a long chat with an Irish night sister who was absolutely wonderful and just talked to me about death, and nobody had done that before. And she was so incredibly matter-of-fact and assessed my chances of maybe 50-50 it would be. And she was absolutely lovely, and we talked long into the night about what was going to happen and all that. And the next thing I knew, I was down in the I suppose he must have been the chap who did the anaesthetic, and I was at pains to tell him I was 12 stone and would he please give me enough of his medicine. Anyway, the next thing I knew was waking up on the operating table, and I looked up, and the surgeon and his two assistants that I'd been talking to the surgeon turned to his assistant and says, "Pity you're too late, chaps." And I thought, that's odd, because I had all my senses, and I suddenly realised I wasn't seeing him from the operating table, I was seeing him from up top, and it was extraordinary to look down and see me lying on the table. And I had absolutely no fear, very strange, sort of really seriously interested in what was happening, no fear at all. And then I saw the nurses clearing up the place and starting to switch the lights out. And the next thing was that I seemed to go further up and into a thick mist. And again, there was no fear. It was total peace, total calm, total acceptance, a little tinge of regret at leaving the body that had been so good to me for so long. And then gradually the mist formed into a tunnel. And my tunnel was a great long thing with aluminium sheets and sort of peach light behind each sheet, going back and back and back and back. And I wasn't me. I was a long aluminium tube with rounded ends, and in a place of total peace, no coercion to do anything, absolute compassion, total understanding. And then I became aware of a vague light at the end of the tunnel. As soon as my mind was aware of that, the tube started to travel very slowly along the tunnel. And when it got to the end, it stopped. And then I came out of it as a babe about 3 years old, probably. And probably with a nappy on, if you like. And it was just an expression of total innocence, really. And I remember there was no fear at all. I remember seeing this area in front of me, which I can only describe as like Carrara marble floor, and no people and no buildings and nothing like I'd ever seen, sort of misty forms that were vaguely architectural. And then the beings, I was aware of beings, but I couldn't see them or anything, but they were there, and their minds were totally compassionate, total understanding of how I felt. And it was extraordinary, because I wasn't in the least bit afraid. I was curious, and I really wanted to know what was happening. And I was aware of the voices saying, "This is where the language. I haven't got the proper language for this. This is the entrance to where we are. That's the nearest thing I can get. These are some of our concepts, and if you can contribute to these concepts, or if you can even understand them, you're very welcome to come in and join us." And I was given the idea, and I can't even tell you what the concepts were. I mean, it was to do with the colour of music and all sorts of things that are way beyond our five senses, really. And they said, "You've got all the experience of all of your lifetimes here. You've got all the time in the universe to make up your mind." And I looked at some of these concepts and I thought, I don't even understand. And I said, if you like, I think I ought to go back. And there was a universal chortle, not of laughing at me, but laughing with me. And they said, "We think you should." So I got into the tube again and started hurtling down the tunnel. And I was aware that at the other end, I could only describe, there was great shards of glass, broken glass at the end, and I thought, I'm going to come back into a great deal of pain. But in the event, I went hurtling through these things without any effect at all. And the next thing I remember was somebody tapping on my skull and saying, "Is there anyone in there, Mr. Miller?" And I was desperate to tell them about the great joy that I'd had in my journey up to the other place. And I couldn't, because I was absolutely asleep, and it was an extraordinary experience, and I came back with a totally different set of values. I had every sense was tweaked up a degree, if you like, and everything I touched, everything I heard, everything I saw was as I had never seen it before or never heard it before. And I was also totally aware of the energy of everything and the connection between everything. I could almost see the joins, if you like, of the energy line. But I'm not suggesting for a moment that you have to go through the death experience to have your perceptions moved up to another level, because there are people, perfectly millions of perfectly normal people whose perceptions are at that level already. So I'm not claiming to be anything unique at all. It's just that I'm more sensitive, I think, to earth energy, which I've been specialising in for the last 25 years, than I was before. I decided at that time that I did not want to go on with the life I'd had before. because I could see all the things wrong with it. And I came down to Cornwall down here and sat up here and recuperated in remarkable time. The implication is that, okay, yes, there are other realities going on at the same time as we are existing here. According to the scientific world, the other realities do exist. And the latest stuff on quantum physics is almost a proof that other realities do exist. These scientists at one time wouldn't have listened to experiences which implied some sort of other sense, or a spiritual sense, if you like. But now, of course, they're intent on finding what human consciousness is and what our real relationship to, and what is reality, what is our relationship with the cosmos. And they are the people who are beginning to be supportive about these sort of experiences. The trouble is that their findings and my findings, if you like, are not getting out to mainstream, and there are millions of people who just dismiss these things. Oh, no, it's absolute nonsense. All I ask you to do is to consider the possibility that they could be true. Don't dismiss it. Just think about it. I'm making some dowsing rods here because I'm quite into dowsing, and these are rods that I'm making for particular people because I've taken an outline of their hand and I make them to fit the hand. Dowsing is one of the doorways into finding an extra sense of some kind. This is the sacred site of Bus Cawanon, and it's the place where I really started to learn about earth energy. It is extremely complex, and these old people knew more about it than I will ever know. Very difficult to describe what earth energy is. Anything that you try and put in a pigeonhole, you're oversimplifying. This is a very, very complex structure. It's a combination of the Earth's nervous system and its meridians. It's exactly the same sort of system as we have. And scientists, of course, have measured the difference of the energy inside the circle and outside, and it is measurable. So there is a difference. So earth energy does exist. And it's not something we're having to prove now. It's something we have to probably improve the instrumentation to measure it. The Japanese are really seriously trying to develop some sort of electronic system because they realize the importance of the profound effect that earth energy has on our being. There's something old and ancestral about blacksmithing that I discovered the art really after I'd been through the whole commercial rat race. So I came in here about 25 years ago and made the first dowsing rod. It was incredible because I'd just been to a talk with somebody who was a consummate dowser, old Colin Bloy, who started the Fountain International. I went to him and I asked him to point me towards a dowser in Cornwall. And he said, because I wanted to work on earth energy, he introduced me to earth energy. And he said, do it yourself. And I felt totally rejected. I thought he'd shut a door on me, but he hadn't actually, because 6 months later I knocked out the dowsing rod I use now actually. I've hammered at this rod and with some anger actually, still at Colin Bloy for and I thought, well, you know, all right, I'll do that. And I used this and I walked up the road between my house and the hill at the back and crossed the line between the hill and St. Michael's Mount. And I said, is there any earth energy flowing between the hill and St. Michael's Mount? And I got just that little flicker, but it was doing it on its own. And that totally changed my life. And in 25 years, I'm still learning. As soon as you think you know something about the Earth's field and the way its energy reacts, you discover a whole new path. It's a totally living being, and it's got moods like we all have. The line actually goes through the forge. In fact, that I have to say is why I've got the forge there, because it's right smack in the middle of the Athena energy, and it's very, very strong, creative female energy, and it's a great place to work. Anybody in the world can find an energy line if they acknowledge that it's there to start with, and if they realise its existence. Then a dowsing rod will show it up, provided they reach the level of concentration you need to be sure that that's what you're finding. And what you have to do when you're looking for an energy line is absolute total concentration on exactly what you're looking for. This is the difficult bit. Absolute total concentration. You've got to cut out everything else in the world. So show me where the nearest edge of this energy line is. Now that's the nearest edge. And you go to the search position again, and you ask for the centre of the line because you want to find the width. And the rods register where the centre of the line is, which is that way. As soon as they're parallel. And you put them to the search position again, and you ask for the outside edge, the far edge. Now this is quite a wide line actually. It doesn't matter what you're dowsing for, as long as you're totally concentrated on finding that and nothing else. And that's the difficult bit with dowsing. The degree of concentration we need is much higher than anything else we do in our normal lives. All earth energy is benign. Sometimes there are some uncomfortable bits, but they have been influenced by people's consciousnesses rather than there's nothing evil or satanic about earth energy at all. But sometimes, of course, because these lines are made up of lots and lots of different frequencies, sometimes there is a frequency that's uncomfortable. And people very often get in touch with us and say, is there anything you can do about this, because I can't go into that room. We have a fairly close relationship with the management. We don't decide what should happen. All we do is point out that somebody is uncomfortable with that particular frequency of earth energy, and please can they do something about it. And 99.9 times out of 100 they will say, yes, fine, we can sort it out, but we'll sort it out in a way that won't harm anybody else. Usually when we are called out, I take Baal on, because she actually is, as a female, is sensitive to things that don't register with me. Sometimes, of course, there are entities, if you like, which are just us trapped in a different time. This was an important one, because as a 5-year-old child who had got to the stage where they were being deeply disturbed by an entity who was making noises with her toys.
When we first moved in, I didn't notice there was a problem, but my little girl started saying a few things like, for instance, what's that man doing behind you, Mummy? And with the stairs here, when we used to walk up the stairs, she'd stop halfway and say, stand back and let somebody pass. I thought it was a little game. But as the months went on, I started to hear things. This is Saskia's bedroom, and this is the mobile, which is the first thing I heard that I couldn't explain. I was in bed reading, and I heard this noise, which is quite, maybe a little louder than that. As somebody had brushed past it, so I assumed Saskia's on her way into the bedroom. She didn't turn up, so I came to check her, and she's fast asleep. So the next day I decided to come up here and jiggle the bed about, lay on the bed and see if it would create the same noise. And when I couldn't explain this, I literally sat on the bed and thought, something's not right, there's something going on. I was reading her a story one night and she said, it's much too scary for me to sleep in here now. I said, what do you mean? She said, there's someone comes in my room at night, I can hear them walking around. So I tried to say maybe it was the birds on the roof, or Mummy coming to check you. She said, no, I'm on my own and I know there's somebody here because I can hear them breathing. And they wake me up and I don't like it and I'm very frightened. On the landing outside here, because it's a wooden floor, we could hear footsteps going between my room and Saskia's room. Sort of almost sounded like they were running sometimes. And in her bedroom here, because I had a baby monitor on, I could hear her little toys being played with. If I'd heard something, I would come in and peek through the door and she'd be fast asleep. It started to really frighten me. I didn't want to be in the house in the evening on my own. Hamish said he would come and have a look round for us.
All these things are energy forms. They have no particular material existence here. They can exist anywhere at all. The big point about these is they are desperately lonely. They're just us at a slightly different level. They're lost. They're desperately lonely. They've nobody to talk to at all. And what they try and do is summon up enough energy to impinge on one of our five senses. And they will do anything just to say, for God's sake, I'm here, will somebody help? So once you've located them in this thing, there is a way of communicating with them to help them to realise where they are and to realise their absolute ambition to get out of here and back to the sort of life where they could be at the next level. They often go off without even saying goodbye, which is slightly worrying because you've gone to all this effort and suddenly, whoosh, they've gone. And the people in the house, of course, suddenly realise that they have gone. There is a fundamental difference in the house. There's no reason for fear anyway. There wasn't before. But people are concerned, obviously, about bumps in the night and things like that.
When he came down and said that they had found somebody, it was a big relief actually. And it was quite, I felt quite emotional knowing that there had been somebody here, obviously trying to get help. But from then onwards, felt a lot more peaceful upstairs. It's like a different place, all thanks to him. Happy house.
There was the case of the Mount Even Hotel where there was a great deal of disturbance about with one of the energies, and people were feeling ill and depressed, and it was having a serious effect on their whole way of living.
We bought the hotel because of its fantastic views. It dates back to 1840 and there's a lot of history and there's a lot of human footprint there, and the energy wasn't that clean. You know, in places, you know, being quite sensitive, you know, I'd actually feel physically sick in some areas, and although I'm not psychic, even I could see different sort of discarnate figures like shadows wandering about, and guests would often sort of ask me in the mornings, were their rooms haunted? Bless him, Hamish came and did an awful lot of work for me, helped clear the energy lines where they were really thick and sick, and also did some rescue medium work, and now, you know, people, you know, so many people now comment on how wonderful the energy is here, and that's because it's been cleared and the energy that was naturally here is just so beautiful. But until Hamish cleared it, we really couldn't enjoy it. I don't think we would get the amount of repeat business that we get, and so much of our business is repeat business, and you know, it's because of the way it makes people feel, the sense of peace and relaxation that's available there now. See, Hamish has got some hotline to higher management, and don't ask me how he does it, but bless him, he does it beautifully.
Most times we find it's just a discomfort caused to the whoever is living in the house by one particular frequency of energy. And we just ask the management to change the frequency from a disturbing one to a healing one. So we do a double whammy and they feel so much better.
We live in a beautiful bungalow, but it never felt comfortable. I had permanent headaches, I felt depressed, I could never lift myself out of this depression. But once Hamish had cleared it, then the whole vibration changed. I felt joy afterwards. I felt totally elated.
While I was working with other people outside around to try and help them with their energy problems, I realised that I'd still an awful lot to learn. And I was experimenting in this room actually, and during the experiment I found that there was a little energy centre here. There's an absolute basic form of an energy centre in that it has a spiral, a vortex coming out of it, and always there are straight radials of energy coming out of it. And I found that the total count was 14. Everybody can be involved in this because everybody has an energy centre of this sort of kind, either a strong one or a weaker one, in their own room. It seems to respond to their consciousness. If you start working with it and just acknowledge it, like you would acknowledge your dog or your cat or something like that, and stroke it, and just say hi. It's not a po-faced thing to do, just say hi and acknowledge the fact that there is a pulsing energy centre, a live energy centre here. It will respond to your thoughts. You must understand that the earth has a consciousness. and it reacts to our consciousness. And the simplest way to find out how it responds is to periodically count the radials coming out of it. You see, even while we've been filming here, we've been putting our attention on this little spot and recognizing it, and that's all it needs. It starts responding right away. So it'd be worth, we started with 14 radials when the shooting started. So I'll just have a check and see how many there are now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Hello. It still sends shivers down my spine. The implication behind a change like that, because 3 of us have been thinking about it, just consider the enormous implications behind the fact that you can communicate, or your consciousness can communicate with something live that's pulsing on the earth. Heading now for Marks Bay, and very shortly St Michael's Mount will come into view. And St Michael's Mount is an extremely important part of my life, right from the initial stages of coming to Cornwall, and has continued to be, because it was instrumental in starting off the research on the Michael line, which goes from, we now understand, goes from Carnley Ball and comes through St Michael's Mount and goes right across the country for 300 miles. And I became really interested in what happened to the Michael line, and joined up with Paul Broadhurst to write the book called Sun and Serpent. And this was the initiation to come over here and steep ourselves in the energy here. I was able to tune into the particular band of frequencies that is the Michael line, and practiced in finding them by being driven in the dark in a van so that I couldn't see where we were, so I could tune in and pick up these energies absolutely anywhere, in any weather conditions. And that I spent 6 months doing that before we even started doing the research in the book. St Michael's Mount, it's such a stimulating place. There's a recorded story now. It was 3rd or 4th century BC, and it was at night, and there were 4 fishermen at the high tide rowing back across, and they suddenly, one of them looked up in the front there, and he was astonished to see this bright light right on the end of the island on the right hand side there. And they thought, of course, at that time it was a manifestation of the Archangel St. Michael. And I think the facts behind it are that at that point there are 4 major energy lines meeting, and they are all different frequencies. They can live together quite well, but I think just at that moment they probably got in sync. And the impact of the vortex of energy there affected their eyesight, if you like, their vision, and they saw it as a great big bright light. It was a vortex of energy. Very, very few places in the world there are major pairs of energy lines meet. And where they meet are really sacred places, very special places indeed, and they have a profound effect on all our biomagnetic fields around us. And all of us feel the difference. People come over here, they walk across the causeway here, and they go up there, and they come back from St Michael's Mount feeling absolutely great. And it's because all their energy fields around them, the biomagnetic fields, are all caressed and beautifully balanced. And that's why it's so important that we must find out about Earth energy, because it does affect our behavior enormously. the right-hand side there, just behind that, there's a flat platform just behind the little V notch. And we found a power point which is exactly the same as the one we found in the cottage. So the center of the power point, we dowsed the center of the energy, and we found this amazing, almost true, this is not true, but Fibonacci spiral. Difficult for me to do accurately. Spirals are notoriously difficult to draw, but from there and from the center, there were these radials coming out in exactly the same way. And it was very difficult to count these because the whole thing was pulsing. It was so powerful. And as soon as we started observing it, I did a count of these things. It was quite difficult actually. It's a very narrow platform. And I kept going around and trying to get the number. And there's a 50-foot drop into the sea. And of course you forget when you're watching this rod. And it was pulsing so much, it was very difficult to get an accurate count, because as soon as you started to consciously acknowledge that there was a power point there, it started to vary, and this spiral started to tighten up. But it's certainly one of the most powerful energy centres in the UK. My mentor was Colin Boy, and he was the man that taught me to dowse. And he taught me about earth energy, and he taught me about how he was interpreting a way of altering people's behavior, actually, by getting a group of people to communicate with the earth. And the response from the earth had an effect on all the people living around. And he did it actually when the mods and rockers came down to Brighton, and he started a thing called the Fountain, round about the Fountain, that's why it's called the Fountain International. And he had 100 people around just pouring sort of good wishes and benevolence and calm into this area, and it had a profound effect on the way the mods and rockers. They were chucking stuff through shop windows before, and then they ended up exchanging helmets with policemen, and I mean there was a huge difference, immeasurable difference. The thing about Son of the Serpent was, I mean, it all started here. We were absolutely inspired by St. Michael's Mound. It was 3 years worth of work to follow, 18 months of work to follow the Michael line, and then the realization in the middle of the whole thing in Avebury that there was another line. There was a balance, there was the female balance, and nature needs a female balance. We should have known. It's there, an almost circular stone here, and the energy point is just to the right of that on the platform. And this is where the Apollo and Athena and the Michael and Mary actually meet at that point. The Earth has made a mathematical manifestation at this point, which is quite extraordinary. It took 3 years to develop. And it's now 4 absolutely perfect 12-pointed stars. Now it progressively changed all the way up each time the Michael and Mary crossed. And when we started to check, as it changed, every point on the Michael and Mary changed its manifestation at the same time, which implies some sort of communication, some sort of intelligence coming down this earth energy. The energy on the Michael line was weaving along like a river, and it's a natural thing for earth energy to do. The whole joy of the story and the 3-year search developed from this point here. John Michel had dug up some information by the Rishi brothers in France about another lineup which included St. Michael's Mount and St. Michael's Skellig in Ireland, and came right up from Greece right through Europe. The line through Europe was 2,500 miles long. England was 300 miles long. And we thought there must be much more to learn, which in fact there was, and it took us 10 years to do this incredible journey down, following the 2 lines actually that come across the bay here and cross at that point there. The manifestations again on the crossing points changed from the original simple one on the St. Michael's Skellig. It finally ended up with a sort of almost like a Rosicrucian sign, most extraordinary. The Apollo line came into the temple of Apollo in Delphi, and it made a great loop round the stone, the Sybil stone, where the oracle used to be. So obviously there was a distortion of the energy, and that would affect people. The scientists are recognizing the importance of human consciousness and how it affects everything. I think that people underestimate the influence that we have, our consciousness have on the earth. Now, blacksmithing means a great deal to me because, well, first of all, it's about earning a living. But the other thing is that with the other work that I do, it's working with fire, air, earth and water. And I think you have to be really brought down in close contact with the earth when you're working with this sort of stuff, working with earth energies and working with all that sort of thing. But these journeys around the world were I mean, it was over the years actually, and they were incredibly draining. I was under a huge stress to get the dowsing right because we were always up against time and money. So these two things made us have to rush from one place to the other. And of course we didn't know where we were going until we found out about dowsing. So we had no positive plan about where we were going to be or where we were going to go. And time after time we'd have disciplined 2 weeks or 3 weeks or something like that. And we'd come back having travelled almost thousands of miles, absolutely exhausted. And people would come along and say, "Oh yeah, have you been on a holiday then?" And I used to think, "Oh my God, what a holiday." So it was so important to have this at the end of the journey, the pure business of blacksmithing, this grounding of fire, air, earth and water. I developed a whole group of customers, if you like, or potential customers or friends, who started giving me really very interesting commissions for sculptures. There was one particular sculpture in Penzance which was great actually. It was a celebration of completing a garden, and it's called Coming Home.
Tony and I think we saw Cornwall coming back as returning to our Avalon, and what Hamish has done for us here is to give us something which gives me an extraordinary sense of joy. It's fun, it's moving, but it's so meaningful.
I just wanted to include the wee gate. I'm very proud of it. It earned our last visit to New Zealand, where we finally met the Waitaha, who started the whole thing about Pālau community. The reason we went to New Zealand to work with the energies there was quite simple, because the Son of the Serpent took us 3 years to do across England. It took 10 years for the manifestations to change in the Dance of the Dragon. And I thought, well, surely I can find somewhere in the world for these manifestations to change faster. But it was only when we got to New Zealand, we suddenly realized that in the first visit, that these manifestations were very complex and very profound, and there was an understanding of from the Maori based on the knowledge of the ancient people, the ancient Waitaha, and their culture of 2,000 years ago, and we learned so much from that so quickly. The earth is really, she is so benign and she is so kind to us, but I think that she really is trying to communicate with us by doing these manifestations, because there's no other reason to do it. This is a form of communication, and the basic form of communication must be mathematical between two such diverse species. It's the only way they can communicate. While I was there, of course, I had some really very, very profound experiences indeed, which actually probably had the same effect as a near-death experience. In fact, it was very close to another near-death experience, but it had a different form, because there were the Waitaha ancestors in the background of this thing. And I hadn't realised just the immense power that their minds have. Waitaha were a race that came from various different parts of the world, actually. They had schools of learning which we don't begin to understand, because they taught them a degree of concentration that we can't conceive of now, because we can't achieve that sort of level of concentration. The thing is that these people lived for 1,000 years in total harmony with each other and with the earth. They wasted absolutely nothing. And they had a huge regard for every living form of life on the island and for each other, because they were completely mixed race, different ethnic groups, and they were in total harmony, and they had no perception after 1,000 years of war. And they were capable of making decisions, the leaders made the decisions which were compassionate and fair for everybody. I feel incredibly privileged to have been involved with the Waitaha, the ancestors of the Waitaha, the people, the descendants of the Waitaha. Because of their way of living, it was honest, it was pure, it was absolutely in tune and in harmony with everything in nature and the cosmos. And I think we've got a great deal to learn from them. I've been really very lucky because I've been able to go all around the world looking at sacred sites. Of course, every time I come back to Cornwall, I'm absolutely delighted and so happy to be back here, because it has a magic all of its own, and it has its own sacred sites. But one of the most powerful, and the one that affected me profoundly, was the one in Castle Hill in South Island in New Zealand. It's a huge site, and right in the middle of it there is a marae, which is related to the sacred Punamu stone, where they used to collect the Punamu, and the women looked after this particular marae, and that usually had a water-filled basin in it. By the time we got there, it had a dry season. It was all dried up, and it was a sort of sandy base, dusty base with rocks on it. And I started dowsing for the power centre, and it had an extra 5 big energy lines which come in from different directions. I mean, they were bands of that sort of relative size, and they were meeting here at that point. Now, normally, when you have something like that, you have some sort of manifestation at the point, which is an addition to the spiral and all the radials. And I went very confidently towards this thing, because I thought, here we have one of the major sacred sites in New Zealand. Nothing, absolutely nothing. And I tried with every level of dowsing that I've got to try and find this thing, because I felt that I was being the one who was inadequate, and I wasn't being able to pick up the subtleties of what was happening in this site. And I was really seriously disappointed, because I had a feeling that this place would be of some absolutely paramount importance in the work I've been doing. So in absolute despair, I just marked the place with a little stone. I felt totally inadequate, but I marked it because I still had the feeling that there was something was going to happen here. It's an important place. Amazing feeling of the whole massive great stones around, and the magic of ancient people, and just a feeling, vague feeling. And then I had to walk away. I went back to this site the next day, because I knew there was, and I was actually with a group of people, and the group included an amazing Maori girl who'd said very, very little at all, but she'd been with this party, and they were visiting sacred sites all around New Zealand, and they happened to be visiting on this particular day. And I was sitting down at the edge of the site there, and she was sitting a bit further along, didn't say anything at all. And she suddenly got up, and she had a backpack, and out of her backpack she took this enormous great Punamu stone. This is Punamu, the green stone, the peace stone. It's a magical, it's a jade type thing. It was much, much bigger than that, the one she had. And she suddenly started to walk in. Of course, there was no marking on where, and my stone was one of 1,000 stones in the middle of this place. I suddenly was aware of it, getting this Punamu stone out, and walking very carefully into the centre of this marae, and she hadn't been there. Nobody had seen me dowsing. And she kicked the stone away with great ceremony, laid the stone down on that point, and then stood back. And she raised her head, and there was almost a complete metamorphosis. She was sort of unshouldered and suddenly became almost balletic, and started singing to the earth. And then she looked up and she beckoned, because Bar and 2 or 3 other girls were there, and they all sang again to the earth. And it was a delightfully peaceful ceremony, and I had to go off looking for a well somewhere else. And Bart told me about the detail of the end of the ceremony later in the evening. And I said, I must go back and see if anything has happened to this place after this Maori girl had done the ceremony. So the following morning, I went up, and where I had had no indication of a manifestation whatsoever the day before, or 2 days before, there was suddenly the most beautiful thing in the middle of it, which had formed itself right on that point. This thing did not exist the day before. This thing was a direct result of Donna, Maori, close to the earth, singing, consciously communicating with a power center in the earth. And it's this sort of manifestation that it's just so important that people realize that they do have a direct communication through the consciousness with the planet. And they can affect profoundly the future of the planet and the communication with the planet and the care for the planet by their thought and their concern for its being. I didn't realize at the time that in this place where Donna had her experience, I would have a cathartic experience later on. We had several visits to New Zealand, but this last one, we had done an awful lot of preparation for setting up talks and visits and research into various sacred sites. Something happened in Singapore. Either I drank the water or something bit me, because we were supposed to stay 3 days with some friends of mine in Sydney. And when I got off the plane, I felt really, really ropey. And I finally got to the stage there where I was whistled into intensive care in the hospital. And for 5 days I was on a drip feed, not anything to eat, couldn't put my foot to the floor, got convulsive hiccups. And it got to the stage with Bar where we had an earnest discussion about how the hell to get me home. And we came to the conclusion that a quick cremation was probably the right job, and Bar could take me home in her hand luggage on the rack. The thing is, in hospital I had this amazing hallucination, I suppose, which lasted 4 consecutive nights. And the hospital changed into a laboratory with great big glass rectangular tanks with coloured fluid in them. And there were benign people feeding nutrients into the glass tanks, which had sort of amoeba-like shapes, and I was one of them. I was aware at the back of my bed of 2 immense creatures chuntering to each other, very, very deep voices, and say, it's all very well having to look after this creature, but it's made of very poor material. And I never actually saw them, but they were so familiar to me after 5 nights that I made a little sketch of them in the hospital, of these creatures as I thought they would have to be. And although I was quite seriously ill, I wasn't really too worried about it, because I knew I was being looked after by these huge, immense, benign creatures behind my bed in the hospital. And although all the plans that I had were completely scuppered, I had no idea what a wonderful experience I was about to have in Castle Hill. So the Waitaha are an ancient people with a very, very special way of relating to each other and the earth. And their culture came down through the women, who remembered everything in meticulous detail through songs. The culture of the Waitaha was perfect memory, perfect recollection, all that sort of thing. And they had this degree of concentration that we don't begin to understand. So the concentration by the women on their songs and the detail of the song means that the detail of their culture came down through the songs with incredible accuracy, and they are such a shining example of what we could be. Going up to Castle Hill at dawn on the last day, we knew that something important was going to happen. And we walked down with some difficulty, if you like, because my leg was still suffering from whatever had happened. And I asked the management if it was okay to sit down, and because you have to have these courtesies with the management, and you can't ever take them for granted. So I asked if it was okay if I sat down. They said, no, it's fine. So I sat in the middle of this thing, and I just relaxed into the whole energy of the place, and got deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And there was nobody else there. Bar was there, just observing. Absolutely quiet, beautiful morning. A really numinous feeling about the place. And suddenly I became aware that I was being watched. And I resisted it because I didn't want anything to disturb this thing. And eventually I just couldn't stop myself turning around, and I looked around. Absolute deep shock, because I saw these two immense beings who had been behind my bed in the hospital, and through them the ancient ancestors of the Waitaha came through with their concern, and they came through as they had the Waitaha had the men of the stone, and they were men of the stone. A lot of the communication was mind to mind, and they had a way of conveying on ideas that is beyond telepathy. It's some way of mind-to-mind communication that goes beyond language. But it was couched in terms that I have to almost marginalise to try and get the whole essence of the message through. But their message was very, very loud and clear, that they were deeply concerned about the state of the earth at the moment, particularly about the way we're choosing our leaders. Because their leaders were born in the right place, at the right time, under the right stars, with generations of deep knowledge about relationship with people. And they could make their decisions fairly for everybody. And they said the decisions that are being made are destroying our whole concept of living in harmony on the earth. And they were worried about the way the medical people treat bodies rather than mind, body and spirit together, because their perception is they're inseparable. They have to treat them all together. And of course they use natural medicines, but there was never any sort of commercial application to doing it. You were a healer and you treated with natural medicines. And they were disturbed about the companies who make money out of this sort of thing. They were concerned about so many things but particularly the waste of food, the waste of the earth's resources, just to produce things that nobody really needs. And they reckoned that if things go on as they are, they were deeply concerned about what was going to happen to their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, and our great-grandchildren. And their message, it wasn't a complaining one, it was a desperation to try and understand what had happened to humans to create the world that we've created now. And when we came back, we decided we had to do something about it, try and get this message out to people, and try and lift the perception of the people all around the world to the situation we're in. And this is what developed into Parallel Community. I found that when I got back, I had been very, very deeply disturbed by what had happened with my meeting, if you like, with the ancestors at Castle Hill. And it started a whole range of discussions about what on earth we could do about it. We were talking about it with lots of friends, and we had this meeting down at the Seed, and a number of people, different people come up every 6 weeks, and we tune in with the earth, and we celebrate the cycles of the earth. And this particular evening, it was pouring with rain, only 5 people turned up.
So there were 5 of us at the meeting, and there are frequently 20 or more. So we sat in a small group and listened to some beautiful music.
Gary Merrill was sitting in the back there, and he suddenly looked up and he said, "Everybody every human being has the right to live in peace, but we'll never get that peace until we claim the right.
Hamish said he felt chills run down his spine.
And I got immediately enthusiastic that this is the message we've got to get out. We all have the right to live in peace, and why shouldn't we? And who is making the decisions that make it impossible for us to live in peace?
Everything is depending upon larger and larger organisations, whether it's governments, NGOs, corporations, and it's almost as though the emphasis on big setups to accomplish anything almost disempowers people, because people feel they can't do anything themselves because the solutions are all too vast.
And these people are making a decision which is based not on caring for the people around them, but for the success of their particular company. We've been, not all over the world, we've been around quite a decent part of the world. We've talked to people about this, and every one of them says, yes, we agree with you, there is a huge problem, we have to solve it, but what can I do? So how do we do anything about that? We all get together.
So from there, it grew, and more and more people wanted to know about it. And we had a meeting at Queen's Hotel, Penzance.
I'd say the parallel community is a platform for people who are no longer happy with being ignored, and that they realise that the parallel community is a viable modern communications platform for people who are being ignored and who want their voices heard on a number of crucially important issues where decisions are being made for them that they don't care for and they never voted for.
The idea of the parallel community was, in a sense, looking at what people can get together to do.
People who feel isolated, who feel that they're not getting anywhere, that they are fighting a battle on their own, not realising that there are millions of us all in the world, and we just need to connect.
The parallel community is an empowerment, or a voice for empowerment, that says, look, you know, if people are voting for a massive expenditure on nuclear deterrence and things like that, that people may not be entirely comfortable with, then what do you do? Where do you go? Marching down Whitehall, we know no longer works. So somewhere where people actually have a platform to express their opinion in a cogent, sane, intelligent fashion. If enough people can actually do that, then perhaps there will be some recognition that there is a voice that needs listening to.
And to show people that they're not alone, that one person working in their village or their town or their community may be doing exactly the same as another group in another village or town or community, but not knowing it.
Try and get all of these people together by means of a website so they have a contact, they know what's happening in their local patch, they know what's happening in the next patch. And we want to encourage some sort of community way of thinking, which says, okay, how does this we can't sort the global problem out at the moment. How do we sort our local problem out? And if we have a local problem, is it the same as the community next door? If we have a solution to our particular problem, can we help that community? And it starts in a very small way with individual people.
We see the parallel community as a network, and connectors are people within that network that can connect to their local area.
I don't believe we can look to any institutions to do it for us. I think we have to do it ourselves. And I also don't believe anyone has the mandate to tell anyone else what those changes ought to be, which is really quite strange. So the idea of uniting people and linking people and getting people together who are already trying to change their communities in whatever way it may be.
We're not going to dictate, because we just do not want to be any dogma or anything like that, but people can come in with their ideas, and even if we don't kind of have that on our agenda, we will know where we can put that person with that idea, connect them up to somebody else, so that we form like a connector, if you like.
We don't want to be aggressive, we don't want to confront the existing situation. It's a complete waste of time. Let's just set up something alongside it and say, we accept what you're doing, and we accept that it is difficult to change the status quo, but we're not going along with you. We're going over this way, and we're going to bridge over what you're doing.
I'm not for a second criticising anybody who actually feels they're prospering under the present system and that everything is okay. All right, that's fine. The reason the parallel community thing actually became, or the reason for that terminology, was that acknowledging that direction for a large number of people. But there's also a lot of people, another large number of people who, if you like, would maybe be quite happy to run alongside that. Not saying, you know, okay, I can't play with your colour ball because it's not working for me, so we're going to play with another colour ball and see if that works for us. Alongside each other, perfectly friendly. We respect your right to do that. It's not something we wish to get into bed with, or something we feel is letting us down as a community. So side by side makes an awful lot of sense.
The parallel community's emblem is almost like a bridge going over a river that we are going to just bridge over, and the rest can do what they like, but we will walk over the bridge and try and live and give an example that there is another way.
I feel that politicians are doing what they can do. I don't think we want to be involved with politicians as such.
I think somehow we need to find new structures, new ways of going on, which perhaps are outside politics, they're outside religion, they're outside the institutions that we now have.
So that we can find different ways of doing it to change the energy of the present systems that we're all thinking are outmoded now.
It is literally impossible, I think, to be elected to that august body, Houses of Parliament, and try and change anything. It won't happen.
If anyone wishes to engage in politics, however idealistic they might be to begin with, to get to the point within the political apparatus where they can actually accomplish anything, effectively they have to conform to the status quo. And so the more people actually achieve positions of power, the less free they are to change anything in any fundamental way. And to that extent I think we need to look outside politics. Not to go against it. Politics works only so far as people believe in it. If anything, the parallel community needs to show that there are other things to believe in.
What we're trying to do in parallel community is to bridge over traditional boundaries in every sense, in social sense, religious sense, national sense, every sense, and get back to the importance of people. And also to provide, through the web, a place, a centre, if you like, where people can join in or refer to or something. So that they have, in the bush in Australia, if they like, they can contact the parallel community with a problem and get some sort of answer. What we basically want to do is to build up a sound footing to locally, in the local community, get the expertise that we need for research and for dealing with the questions and the emails from all sorts of disciplines, and have a place where people who say, what can I do about this whole situation, can come to us and say, what can I do to help? And we will start off by very, very simple things, like guiding them towards their own community and how they can help in that.
Already we have 40 connectors from all over the world, from Britain to Europe, Switzerland, Amsterdam, Germany, to Australia, South Africa, America. It's quite remarkable. You know, word of mouth only, really. One person tells another person, and they are inspired to join in.
I think it's helping the world, people to live together more accepting and appreciative of other people, so that we just live in a more peaceful way.
We want to become a centre of knowledge and ways of moving our community spirit forward. The essence is to get people back to doing practical things. Practical things, not necessarily in the terms of making things, but practical living with your neighbours. Not just your immediate neighbours, but your neighbours in the next country, if you like. And that takes us right through the whole religious bit and the whole political bit and things like that. Say, okay, your religion is so-and-so, your colour is so-and-so, your country is so-and-so, but we're all people, and we've forgotten how to communicate directly. How are you? Are you okay? That's all you need to do. Doesn't take any time at all, doesn't cost you anything, but it starts building up a whole rapport with the community, and that's what we're trying to do. Speak
to people, smile more often, visit neighbours or people in one's own village or town, and just get to know people, because a lot of people are extremely lonely, as we've discovered.
Simple things do make a difference.
Once we join up and get maybe a few thousand, maybe a few 100,000, but we're looking actually for millions of people. And we're not going to march with placards and things like that. We're going to quietly say to the politicians, wonderful, 10 million people would like this to happen. Listen to us.
We have no desire to become a political party. Now, that's not to say that there will be political consequences if the thing actually achieves a certain critical mass, because inevitably, if you make enough mass, then the politicians then have to turn around and say, well, actually there appears to be a problem because we're not satisfying what a large number of people appear to require or need.
Instead of being told this and this is going to happen, it would give us a voice to discuss it, and maybe we might learn that we are wrong on some things, but it's the ideas of not having a voice.
I think we will become a significant voice that the government will have to take notice of. Now, whether they regard it as a pain in their derriere is something they have to decide. I think that the more critical, or the bigger the number, they will have to be at least aware. One thing I would love to see is people spoiling their ballots at a general election paper with a parallel community infinity logo, which really says, look, I can't vote for any of this. How about this? Because every single ballot paper will have to be shown to every candidate on election night. Now that would be something. At least then they'd say, well, what's going on? Something interesting happening here. People are getting a little disillusioned with the political system. What is this symbol? Why are people doing this?
They will know through our web that tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people are thinking this particular way, and it must influence the decision-making process.
And I've got a lot of respect for parliamentary traditions, etc. They represent us. When they start to rule us, I think we have a problem. And I think we need to be aware of it.
The Patriot Act in America, which suddenly appeared 4 days after the 9/11 thing, which patently had been written a long, long time before that, was pushed through the American Senate, if you like, with one abstention. And the one abstention apparently was the one man who said he hadn't read it, and he couldn't vote for it because he hadn't read it. Apparently there were only 2 copies of 394 pages of this act, and it was pushed through. And the Patriot Act means that I can be, if I criticise Mr. Bush, which I'm not doing at the moment, if I criticise Mr. Bush, I can be taken out from here and put into Guantanamo Bay or the equivalent sort of thing without any reason at all, except that if I disagree with anything that the Bush administration says, I am a terrorist or a potential terrorist. And that's what that act means. And these things are being just pushed through at odd times. And we're having the same sort of performance happening in this country. And it's about control. It's about the build-up of the terrorist thing. We've had terrorists around the world for generations. I'm really worried about this technique of building up fear of terrorists, because one terrorist is another freedom fighter. It always has been that way. At the moment, we're a species driven by fear. We are afraid of war. We're afraid of not coping. We're afraid of authority, and that's increasingly the case with the setup at the moment. We're afraid of not being able to pay the mortgage. We're afraid of not having enough money. We're afraid if we have enough money that we're going to lose it. And we live in a state of fear all the time. There are many, many, many people who are afraid to walk out of their houses in case they're attacked, this is not a way to live. There is no reason at all why we shouldn't live in joy. There needs to be some interference. There have to be laws, and yes, most of us are quite law-abiding, actually. But to create more and more and more and more restrictive laws is just not the answer. These controls are becoming onerous, and we have to start re-establishing our rights and our freedom, and our ability to make decisions about our own lives but accept responsibility for them.
We all say, yes, I'd like peace, I want to live in a peaceful world, but can we actually claim that for ourselves and be peaceful ourselves? And that's where it begins.
The future for parallel community will lie in connecting people who are able to take various groups, individuals, small groups, bigger groups of people under the web umbrella and look at the objectives that are actually spelled out on that website. One of those is that all of us have the right actually to live in peace.
What Hamish and I are interested in, which may seem a bit weird to other people, is the fact that it teaches you that nature around us is alive and we can make a difference by what we do and what we think, and in making a difference to the world around us makes a difference to us. It's a flowing from us to the earth and from the earth to us, so it's a knock-on effect.
The earth responds to ritual and ceremony and attention. That's why the ancient peoples built Stonehenge and different sacred places like that. So you can actually re-enchant old sacred places or create new ones yourself, and the earth will respond to that on your estate, in your street, in your close, and then in your town, and out the energy goes, and that really does have a profound effect. Every
single thing we do, there's a reaction for every action. You become part of what you're around. You can't help that. And everything we do, everything all of us do, is completely interconnected, negative or positive. So it might as well be positive.
Doing nothing, I don't think is really an option anymore.
There is another way of living. And yes, it's actually, I had this extraordinary out-of-the-body experience, and I went up and I met the management. I call them the management, lovely people actually. And I realised in the short time I was up there, it might be microseconds, I don't know, but there is a huge amount of humour in the universe. And the humour and the laughter and the joy is being crushed out of us because you can't control people who are laughing. It's time we just shook our heads and got out of this and said, okay, what are we going to do about it? So join parallel community.